when I went through to change my name, I wanted a name that didn't put me in the shadow of somebody else. And I wanted a name that I thought would afford me a bigger life than what I thought my name would have afforded me, because it was my dad. And I didn't want to be my dad. I wanted to be me. And I wanted to be something greater than I thought New Jersey had to offer me, and something greater than my upbringing had to offer me. And so I found the name Atarah, which means crown.
Welcome to Dream Fuelerzz. I'm Natasha Jane Julian, and I've been through it all. Anxiety, panic attacks, you name it. I'm here to show you that healing is possible. I'll share my journey and chat with other guests who transformed their lives. If you're ready to reclaim your power and chase your dreams, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Today, I'm really excited to sit down and talk to Atarah Valentine. Atarah is a music artist, a hypnotherapist, and mindset coach with specialized training in inner child healing, trauma, NLP, mirror therapy, weight loss, just to name a few. We're going to talk about his early life and how that led to his own healing and self-discovery, and his line of work that he does now, and his company, The Seed Level, and all the other amazing things that he's doing, all inspired by his own healing and trauma. Okay, welcome to the Dream Fuelerzz podcast. I'm Natasha Jane Julian, and we're going to welcome Atarah Valentine.
Hello.
Welcome, Atarah.
Thank you. I'm so excited for this. I love being in person because everything in my entire reality is usually over Zoom. So just like being in your space is nice. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. I have been over the moon to be able to do this also in person and to meet like very inspiring people, and to have you, and the fact that you made time for this is really, really cool. And I just have to say first, before we get into everything, I love your name.
Thank you.
Is this, where did it come from? Is this your like birth given name?
Yeah, so I've actually never talked about this, but so I basically, competing stories, but the long and short of it is, moved out of my house when I was in high school. And I had an argument with my mom that escalated, and she said something to me that she said to my sister all the time, which was like, if you don't like it, find somewhere else to live. And it just hit me like a tidal wave. And I was like, it's almost like everything I'd ever done in my house, all of like the fights, like kicking my mom's door down when my stepdad was being abusive. And it just like, I was like, how dare she say that to me? Uh-huh. And I packed up all of my stuff and I moved out of my house, and I never went back, and lived out of my car for like 6 months and would just kind of hop around, and got a job. And I changed my name when I was in high school because I was named after my father. Although there's a couple different versions of the story. My dad thinks I'm named after him. Now that they're divorced, my mom likes to say that I wasn't named after him. I was named after her grandfather, who has the same name. But when I went through to change my name, I wanted a name that didn't put me in the shadow of somebody else. And I wanted a name that I thought would afford me a bigger life than what I thought my name would have afforded me, because it was my dad. And I didn't want to be my dad. I wanted to be me. And I wanted to be something greater than I thought New Jersey had to offer me, and something greater than my upbringing had to offer me. And so I found the name Atarah, which means crown. And I changed my last name as well at that time, because I knew I was going to do music and all these things at that time too. And I'm such a committed person that like, I'm not going to have a stage name. Like I'm going to do everything legally. And like, I'm going to learn how to live my life as this name. I'm going to embody this name. And then years later, my Aunt Mimi, when she was in her 80s, she was living with my mom, and she was like, well, how did you pick Valentine? And I was like, I don't know. It just kind of came to me. And she goes, well, your grandfather, who you were named after, your great-grandfather, his middle initial was V, and his middle name was Valentine, and nobody knew that. And I have a picture of them hanging over my piano. And it's just such a nice reminder. And also a reflection of like, you just sometimes can't explain the way that life happens and how you land on certain things. And yeah, so that's the story behind my name. But it's been my name since I was 16 years old. So I'm 40, turning 45. So,
You look amazing.
so it's my, thank you. So it's my name, and it's especially my name because I had the luxury of choosing it for myself.
Right. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad that I asked you about that, because
Me
it was
too.
really just honestly,
Yeah.
I was really curious. I was like, that's a dope name.
Yeah.
Like, and so you were 16 years old when you left
My house.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We were kind of similar ages, except for I didn't leave in the middle of like a disaster or anything. I was graduated high school a year early, and I went and lived with my boyfriend. We got an apartment, and I was like 16, almost 17.
Yeah.
But that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's amazing that you have come so far. And
Yeah.
as a 16-year-old high school student, you're like, you know what? That doesn't sit well with me.
No. And you know, the thing is, one of the most fortunate things that's happened to me in my life is the degree that I was bullied. And that sounds like a crazy thing, but the trauma that I dealt with, the bullying in my house, the physical abuse, the emotional abuse, I dealt with the same thing when I left my house. I was taught or made to feel at a very young age that I wasn't wanted. It didn't matter if I was walking around a food store. It didn't matter if I was in my home. It didn't matter if I was at my dad's house. My stepmother didn't want me there. And we're so close now, which we can maybe talk about as this unfolds. But the fact that everywhere I went, there was a problem. Someone had some kind of problem with me. Whole families would turn around and point and laugh and say things. And because I didn't look like everyone else in New Jersey. And when I was growing up, like I was called a faggot from the time I was 6 years old. It wasn't cool to be gay. You weren't, you didn't have an option of, there was just the binary. There was just, you're this and that's normal. And if you're not that, then there's something wrong with you. And I grew up with a lot of hate around that, but it really motivated me to get out of there because there wasn't a safe place for me around anywhere where I grew up. Even though I tried to make myself small, I still wasn't safe. There were people who were always somehow finding me or coming at me or finding a problem with me. And when that happened within my home, and my mom was really my only safe space, I was just like, this isn't okay. Mm-hmm. Like even this space now, I don't want to be here. And I wasn't trying to be punishing. It was just this, I knew I had to leave. Like I just knew it wasn't serving me. It wasn't working for me. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't even bring all of my clothes. I just left the house and I never looked back. And to be honest, if I didn't do that, I don't think I would have ended up getting a full scholarship to college because I took that time to be like, what do I want my life to look like? Mm-hmm. And I really invested in sewing and drawing, and I was playing music, and I taught myself cello at that time. And all of this stuff later ended up turning into me getting a record deal with Atlantic Records and a full scholarship to college for design. And right. But it was almost like that rock bottom moment of everything being taken away forced me to have to redefine myself and to decide what I wanted my life to look like. So I'm incredibly grateful for it, even though it was really hard, right? So much of my work and so much of the work I do with people now is being able to understand what the strengths are and what the gifts are that came from these really bad situations, which for me was tenacity and resilience and drive, but also sensitivity and compassion. Those are all beautiful qualities, right? Mm-hmm. But there was so many other attributes and ideas of myself that stuck because of the way that I was perceived by people that I had to learn how to really metabolize and let go of in order to be able to hold on to the good stuff without having to drag the bad stuff behind me, right? So, yeah.
Wow. Well, first of all, congratulations on all that you just mentioned.
Thank you.
Scholarship, okay, record deal. Like some people would have thought, okay, there you go. There's the rest of your life. But you went on to all this other incredible stuff in helping people in the wellness field. So I just wanted to touch on the fact that when I first found you a few years ago on social media, I saw that you were a music artist. And you were just going into some work in the health and wellness field, maybe some identity specialist, but not fully into everything that you're doing now. So my question is, like, after you said you went to college, like, when was the shift that you went into the health and wellness field, and when did that all happen?
Yeah, so I think like anybody who's been through anything of any depth spends a lot of their life trying to understand why, right?
Okay.
And I find it's these people like me who are always looking for greater meaning and purpose, because it's hard to just believe like this just happened to me. All of this abuse happened to me. All of this hatred happened to me for no reason. And I think it motivates people to go like, what's the bigger lesson here? What's the bigger reason? Like, what am I supposed to learn from this? What am I supposed to do with this? Like, what am I supposed to become from this? Do I want this to define me, or do I want this to be a working off point for me to define what I want my life to look like? And so I was always in a seeker. And I always allowed that to be a point of curiosity instead of a definition. So that really inspired me to always look into different religions and schools of thoughts and philosophies. And I'd always been interested in that because I wanted to understand, like, why is this my life? Why am I like this? Why do people have such issue with me just trying to live? Like, I'm just trying to do what everybody else is doing. Like, why is it such a problem? And so it's always been in the background. And even as a musician, my first record with Atlantic was all about mental health issues and suicidal ideation. And I was told they can't release it because no one wants to hear songs about me wanting to kill myself. And, because it was like the early 2000s. And it wasn't cool. Like, nothing I was ever cool. It wasn't cool to be gay. It wasn't cool to be an artist. It wasn't cool to like wear all black. It wasn't cool to do any of the things that I was naturally drawn to. And I faced a lot of resistance. Now, all these years later, every single thing I tried to do, like, people have to do now to be like relevant or to look like they have integrity as an artist. So
now
like
there's a lot of depressive music.
Yeah,
out
I mean,
there.
like, just the irony of it. I'm like, I'm such a trailblazer, but nobody knows it, right? So that kind of propelled me into the space. But professionally, what happened was I had professionally probably one of the best years of my life. I signed a publishing deal with Sony. I, fired my manager, who was my A&R also at Atlantic, who I felt, as much as I want to say kept me small, I kept myself small because I believed I needed him in order to become something. And I just at this point where I said to him, like, look, I love you, but I know I'm going to look back with resentment if I don't actually see if I had a shot at doing more than what you're allowing me to do or what you're creating for me. So, in that time, I networked like crazy. I worked on my craft. I took vocal lessons. I learned how to produce. I learned how to mix. I was shooting and editing my own videos. Like, I was just, because I didn't have money. Like, and I would meet people who are like, you're going to be the male Lady Gaga. And like people who discovered Gaga and Kesha and people like this, like, would say that to me, like, oh, this is this. And like, you should use what she did. And this was the nightlife person she used. And this is this. And I'm like, I don't have money. Like, I don't have money. I can't do it. Right. And
I can so relate to that.
Right. And it's like versus like other friends who were successful. And it's before like even like a Nepo baby was a known thing. They're like, oh, well, I just do this. But their parents were on like the board of Warner Music, or like they were really wealthy and they grew up really wealthy. Like, I grew up on a Marine base in a trailer. Right. It's like that wasn't my reality. So I've had to work really hard to just survive for so much of my life. But then when it came to creativity, I'm grateful because it made me a very qualified person. However, when COVID hit, everything again, the rug was pulled from underneath us. I'd hit a really low point in my life. I'd hit a low point in my marriage before we moved to Los Angeles. My husband and I decided to just move because we couldn't take being in New York anymore. And we got here, COVID hit, he lost his job. He was diagnosed with cancer. A week or two later, no health insurance. And I was like, the fuck are we going to do? And because I've always known what to do in catastrophe, I was like, I have a car. I'll do Uber Eats. I'll do Caviar. I'll do, I signed up for all of the delivery services. And my husband's like, oh my God, you can't do that. And like, that's so embarrassing. And like, we'll figure it out. I'm like, no. Like, if anything, I've been a survivalist. Right. And I know exactly what to do to just make sure we're okay for this time. And I know when to go do that. And then in the process of that, I heard from the company To Be Magnetic, whose work I was doing at the time. And I did a podcast episode with them. It went really well. They asked me if I wanted to be a coach, and it changed my life. And I was so well versed in their work anyway, but I ended up becoming pretty influential in the brand. I had my hands on a lot of things. Because Lacey was pregnant at the time, I was really involved in the rebrand. I reformatted how to manifest with the team. I reformatted the inner child workshop with the team and Dr. Tara. I completely rewrote their shadow workshop. I created the magnetic meetups. I was really into connecting with the community. So it was the first time the coaches, because like the coaches all also kind of like looked to me for the direction. So I started creating our own events where we can connect with the community and things like this. Just the stuff that I thought was missing that would really make the brand special. And in the process of just doing that, I just decided one day, and from a lot of people, and like, I'm grateful, like Tara, Dr. Tara has become a really good friend in that process. And kind of all the coaches and all the people I was close with in the brand were like, why are you here? Like, you kind of feel bigger than the brand now. Like, don't you want to do your own thing? And to be honest, I didn't. But eventually what ended up happening is I hit a ceiling with what I was able to do within the brand. And I was like, oh, okay, like this is the sign to move forward now. And then that's what I did. And I'd already went back to school for hypnotherapy and done multiple certifications in, trauma recovery and mental emotional release therapy and neurolinguistic programming and emotional freedom technique. And just, I had this huge arsenal of tools. And I was like, I want to really get in there with people and help people who've been like dealt a deck of cards that look like mine. I want to teach them that you can be stronger because of this, and not in a way because you have to be. Like, you can be stronger because you understand exactly who you are and what you want, but you also understand that your vulnerability is your superpower, and it makes you bulletproof when you own that as a full package. And that's what I've been able to do. And it's just been the biggest gift.
So I would say that your calling was kind of the transition between your partner having cancer and you stepping in and then getting called to do this new job, and it kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, and it snowballed quickly because I think I've always been in preparation. I'm always preparing for something. I'm never someone who's sitting in their house waiting for life to happen to me. I've never been someone who like prayed to God asking him to give me $1 million. I'm not like making wishes to the universe. I think about, and I've always been like this, right? I've always had the drive. My limitation was always financial though, because it's just how I grew up. That story was so deeply ingrained about what I can and cannot be based on finances. And this is a horrible thing to say on some levels, because even though people like to exist now, like COVID never happened, which is so crazy because it was so traumatic for everybody in the world. And we just like go on like it didn't exist. But it almost took the world shutting down entirely for me to be like, oh, I know exactly what to do here, because I'd been through crisis so many times in my life. Like, I was a really good personal crisis manager, right? So at a time where a lot of people lost direction and lost purpose and lost guidance and things like this. And I was able to be like, oh, I know what to do here. And it was the year that I actually made the biggest leaps and bounds in my entire life. So, it's such a crazy thing to think about because it was so natural. But it took almost like this catastrophe for me to realize how far I came, because I wasn't afraid in the way that everybody else was.
I understand. Yeah. And to be honest, the more and more you're talking about your story, and I said this before, but now I'm going to say it again, like the more I'm realizing that we have a lot. We have a lot in common.
No, we do. Even off camera before this, it was,
Even your story when you were saying like, I had all the tools there and people are like, you should do this and you should do this. But like finances were like my limitations. Like that was like my story. I had all these opportunities presented in front of me so many times. And I was like, I know what to do. Okay, I've got everything here. But it was always like a financial thing. And it was stemmed from this survival story that was ingrained in me and from generations and generations. And so trying to break that mold is already like a hardship in itself. Just trying to like, okay, I'm going to be this transition person in my family, and nobody else has been able to break out of this. So you were a big inspiration for me. And
it's just crazy to hear. You said you also came from like, you were like living in a trailer park. Like I grew up poor. Like I know exactly what you're talking about. Different circumstances, but the same. You're just like
and
fighting.
What I've come to find that's really interesting and worth mentioning is that growing up in and this is what people don't understand, and they really need to, and it goes both directions, right? Because I work with people who are incredibly wealthy now, like some of my clients are billionaires, and I work with people who have absolutely nothing, who are in the worst circumstances you could possibly imagine. And there's a very similar effect that they have and it sounds like a strange thing to say, but it creates this level of fragility around what you want and this level of disbelief. And it's been interesting for me to see that, because when I was in the position of having no money and I saw people, which, we would now call like privileged, right? And want them to own that privilege, I would be like, oh, their life is so much easier because this, and this. But actually, in reality, when I began working with these people, they had the same fragility that I did. And not because of a lack of resources. It's the opposite. It's almost like they have this lack of self-belief because they're always comparing themselves to their parents who are way more successful. So they also feel less than in a completely different way, right? Yeah. But and more less than I felt, because I'm like, oh, I think I'm fucking amazing. I just don't have the money to like to come as others and people know, right? So it's interesting because what happened for me was I became very protective over and fearful of sharing my artistry and sharing my opinions and even talking. Like I wouldn't even talk in social situations because I was so insecure, because I believed if I did one thing wrong, it would all go away. So even getting a job, which I could have very easily done, even with my Atlantic Records money, so many of my other friends were doing Letterman and touring and all these things. But I'm like, I can't. I have to focus 100% on trying to be a successful musician. But then what would happen was then I would get to the point where I had everything and I would have $0. But my ego was so fragile. And I had this belief that if I didn't commit 100%, I wouldn't make it. And in reality, I should have just gotten a fucking job and not thought like, ooh, my entire purpose is in music. And if I'm not doing that, that means my life doesn't have value. Yeah. And I think that's the pressure that everybody feels when they're on either end of that spectrum, right? But you actually have to go out and have life experiences. You have to have interactions. You have to confront your struggle. You have to feel financially safe to be creative. Like the moment we try to put financial responsibility on our gifts, it goes right out the window. Right? Like that doesn't mean in time, as we start developing income and more security, that won't become our thing. But we should never start with that level of pressure on ourselves. Like it has to have space to be pure and to be honest and to grow into what it's supposed to be. Right?
Yeah. You are very super inspiring. And I think that the audience will definitely, I don't think like a lot of people are talking about this, and this is the first time for me that I am hearing some things that are like music to my ears. And I think that if there's anybody out there like me that is wondering like the same type of things, that I think that is going to be very insightful. But I did want to go into a little bit of the work that you actually do now, which is also the magical work to help people heal. And it stems from, your own trauma. So for people that don't know what hypnosis is, NLP, Mare therapy, like kind of give a little bit of insight of what they are and like what type of issue or trauma would they be useful to help?
Yeah. So how I work with people is I really integrate everything into processes. When I work with clients, I always start with, and this is actually available as a workshop because it was just such an effective tool. I'm like, everybody needs to get their hands on this. But I created this process I call the identity algorithm. And essentially, it's a foundational workshop that really allows you to see exactly what the unconscious story is that is going on repeat and looping that's creating your reality. It goes through your childhood. It teaches you how your associations developed, what things you think are good, what things you think are bad. So you can kind of see that based on how you receive from your parents, the behaviors you observed in your parents, your family, the town you grew up in, all these things, right? And so then you go through this questionnaire and it shows up almost like a fire round and you just answer really instinctively and intuitively. And it really paints the picture clearly of What's your relationship with money? What do you think of yourself? What's the first thought you have about yourself when you wake up in the morning? What is this? What's going on here? Why do you view this way? And the reason I love that is because we're too quick to get out of our circumstances without trying to understand them. And if you don't have a fully fleshed out picture and understanding of not just who you are, because what does that even mean? Because that's so multifaceted. But if you don't have a full understanding of how you are and why you are how you are,
okay,
where are you going? How do you know what to change? How do you know what needs to be upgraded or updated programming wise? And we're so quick to be like, I want to manifest this. And we think we're going to get that thing. But really, we're just projecting a feeling or an idea of ourselves that we think we're going to embody once we obtain that thing, which is really just commercialism and capitalism, right? But like packaged as wellness. People will get things as a byproduct of doing my work. But when they get there, they'll be able to appreciate them and receive them fully. That's the difference. They won't go looking to the next thing for purpose and the next thing for happiness and the next thing for this. They understand that those feelings alone are what generate and create the momentum for you to move toward it, for you to go into the world and find that thing or create that thing. So that's where I start in working with people. And then if you're in session with me, we'll set really clear goals of understanding like where you're at, what you're unhappy with, what kind of life you're trying to create for yourself. And then I'll start looking into, okay, well, let's look at your behavior. Let's look at your actions, because this is the life that you say that you want. But how do you get there if nothing that you do now is in alignment with the kind of person who's living that life?
Exactly.
Right? So, I'm a very actionable person. I'm not, even though my background is in hypnosis, I'm not like, let's close our eyes for 3 hours and figure it out. Like, I want people to move because you will overwrite those associations in real time through action. But we have to deal first and foremost with regulation, safety in your body, knowing how to feel what you're feeling, know how to process your emotions. You have to understand what having open loops constantly in your mind is doing to your nervous system. And this is the part everybody rushes by. And I think a lot of companies take advantage of it because they reinforce a lot of lack in people, because the user is never fully learning how to be comfortable within themselves. They're learning to have faith in the process. And the process is still somebody else's. It's not theirs. So for me, I like to put all of the power back in the person who's actually going on the journey. I want you to know what you do, what you're supposed to do when a big feeling comes up. I want you to know how to become resourced when you get riddled with doubt. I want you to know when you're about to having an anxiety attack and how you stop that and how you come back to here. Because if you can do that, you can manifest anything you want. You could do anything you want. Because the biggest thing that we're afraid of is the feeling that we're going to be left with if we don't accomplish what we want. But if you know how to process that feeling, you're not fucking scared of it.
I love that. I love everything that you just said, by the way.
Thank you. I have no time for bullshit. I mean, that's my thing. Like, and I'm not trying to knock other people's methods. I'm not trying to knock therapy and things like this. I think it's great for a certain kind of person. But it doesn't really propel you forward in your life. It's just the truth. A lot of people sit in the same problem for years and years and years. And it's important for them to offload that and like let a little steam out so that they can come back into their body and live their life. But a lot of people are just spending their life repeating patterns that don't serve them. I want to know where the pattern came from, how you do the pattern, how you know when it's time to do the pattern, what your strategy is, and how we create a new one. Yeah. Like for me, like none of this has to be overly emotional. And that's where we get stuck. Because if we understand emotions move very quickly, we don't have to be afraid.
And
right?
I think it's really important how you mentioned the open loop in your brain. So we all have that, and it happens a lot of time, unconsciously, and it's just, repeating and repeating and repeating. So there's a lot of science backed behind the fact that changing your language, changing the way you talk to yourself, the way you think actually changes the physical outcome as well.
Yes.
Because if you're having all these negative things repeating in your brain, like that's the transition of your life. It's going towards that way. I think it all starts with changing that loop.
Yes.
And I'm all too familiar.
And understanding you're even
where it came from. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Where it came from. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was definitely in a lot of that Still healing, but again, learned when I used to have panic attacks, then coming out of that, like, okay, learned what was helping me and how to pinpoint like when I was going to get one and how to manage that. And for me, meditation was like a game changer. But it's really important when you're saying like, when you want change in your life, you can't just meditate, but you have to get yourself like in alignment and then actually take action.
Yes, you meditate to learn to delay gratification. You meditate to learn how to create space. You meditate to learn how to teach your brain to stay in the task positive network, which is the actionable network. Because when you're meditating, you're not, a lot of people think and there's another network called the default mode network. And the default mode network is what gets activated anytime you talk about yourself, think about yourself, what you're going to do tomorrow, what you did last week. And it's the network that daydreams, but it's also the network that ruminates. It's like essentially the story of you exists there, right? And when you're in meditation, that's not the network that's activated. That's the network that kind of goes to sleep, because the task positive network is focused on the breath or a mantra or posture. It's very present, right? And that's what we want to actually be able to tap into in order to manifest, or in order to figure out what the action is and to get our brain on board and to understand the steps, right? But we have to acknowledge everything that pulls us out of that. And there's something that's called the Zeigarnik effect. And I find it fascinating that not a lot of people talk about it, because it's really utilized in a lot of technology and a lot of motivational tools, like even an Apple Watch. And if you know the Apple Watch, they have the circles, right? The loops. You have your standing loop, you have your walking loop for your steps. And every mom that I know, when they got an Apple Watch, they'd stand up in the middle of their show watching CSI, right? At 9 o'clock and start walking around. I'd be like, Mom, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I have to close my walking loop. Why? Because that's what the Zeigarnik effect is. Your brain does not like open-ended loops. So it prioritizes them. It puts them at the forefront. So when your brain sees a fluorescent green circle that's 3/4 of the way closed, it drives it crazy. It wants that closure. And so if you think about trauma, if you think about PTSD, if you think about unresolved emotions that are suppressed, those are all open loops. And your body and your brain will continue to prioritize those loops over your goals, because those loops become the things that you want to avoid or stay away from, because you learned that you don't know how to handle it. And that's why it's so important to understand this stuff, because so much of your brain power and so much of your energy, even physically, goes into protecting you and consciously or unconsciously scanning the environment at all times to make sure that you're protected from these things you learn to be afraid of, right? Everything in life is a loop. And if you're walking around with 5,000 emotional open loops all the time, no wonder you're exhausted. No wonder you can't sleep. No wonder you can't digest food. No wonder your immune disorder acts up, right? No wonder you can't make anything happen. No wonder you procrastinate, because your body is constantly in this place of trying to keep itself safe to keep you alive. It's not thinking about creation. It's not thinking about what's next.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the open-ended loops that you're talking about, I'm very familiar with that. I recently had my very first, actually I've had 2 sessions now, therapy sessions in my whole life. And I came to this lady because I was having like very severe, like stage fright, but like with really intimate groups, you know? So I was taking like a vocal class on Zoom, and I was like deathly scared of the Zoom. And when I went to see this lady, she said, somewhere in your psyche, you've got this open-ended fight or flight from when you used to have panic attacks. And it's probably just like associating one of those to these other situations that don't match it at all, because you never closed the loop.
Yeah.
So I just find it really, really interesting. Yeah. And for some reason, my body is like, oh, you're not safe.
Yeah.
But it's not because something's happened on a Zoom call before. It's just something hasn't closed before.
Totally.
So
And
I was like, whoa, that's crazy.
no, it is. And if you take that even with like things like phobias, for example, like if I have to work through fear of flying or something like that with people, which is not really the kind of work that I do, but I am trained in that. A lot of people develop a phobia around flying, because what tends to happen when you're in travel, you wake up, you don't eat, right? You get up, you pack your stuff, you run out the door, you get to the airport, you maybe have something sugary that you normally wouldn't eat, your blood sugar goes up, Insulin comes, it crashes down, you get on the plane, and now you're in really low blood sugar, and your body gets really shaky and uncomfortable. And then you associate that with, oh, I'm having anxiety over flying. And now you just built an association. And every time you do it, people keep repeating the pattern, not understanding that that's not what's happening at all.
That's
right?
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's funny because your brain's fascinating because it's genius in so many ways and it's completely stupid in so many ways.
Yeah. I think that you're this amazing human and you do all this work in these areas that I'm so interested about. And really it has everything to do with helping people heal, and from either trauma or PTSD or from what you came from, like so many different areas of their life. And the one thing that I was reading about on your website was the mirror therapy. And I wanted to touch on that really quick because a lot of times I've been taking a lot of courses and a lot of times they'll talk about removing blocks and stuff, but nobody really addresses like, how do you remove a block? Like sometimes you can do it during meditation or journaling, but like, how do you know if a block, like I know I have certain blocks, but how do you know if it's gone? Yeah. And how do you remove it?
Yeah. So first of all, let's talk about what a block is.
Okay.
Right? Because even when you say the word a block, oh, it's a block. Okay. Like let's keep calling it a block and never move through it. Right?
Got blocks right. Over here.
It's a block. It's a block. I found my block. A block. And it's like all of a sudden you can't fucking move because you have all these blocks around you. Right?
Yes.
So I like to even reframe what a block is. I call a block is essentially the perimeter of your comfort zone.
Okay.
Right? A block's purpose is to keep you within spaces that you feel safe, right? Spaces that you feel like you have control and understanding over. Now, unless you love your comfort zone, you're going to have to try and move out of it in order to figure out what your blocks are. You can't be sitting in a cushy beanbag chair in the middle of your comfort zone and think you're going to find blocks, because a lot of times your blocks will come up out of nowhere when you're actually moving toward the thing that you say that you want, right? Because for a few reasons, you either developed a negative association around it, like, ooh, exposure means that people are going to judge me or people are going to come for me, right? Or you can also have a negative association because your subconscious flags anything that's unknown as fear, right? Because again, if you understand, your brain's one job is to keep you alive. And it does that through using your nervous system and your senses to understand what's safe and what is not, right? Based on how you learn to view the world, how you learn to view yourself, right? So a block wants you to stay within that space. So something like mental and emotional release therapy, what I like about it is it allows people to sit in an emotion without attaching a story to it. And the reason I want to correct that is because an emotion is a natural biological reaction. A feeling is our interpretation of that emotion. A feeling is a story.
Okay.
Right? A feeling can make an emotion stay repressed for 35 years. Right? So with mental emotional release therapy, what we'll do essentially, and I don't want to give a lot of detail because I don't want people to try this on their own and give themselves panic attacks, but within the safety of a session, I'll get an idea of the person's relationship with time and how they see them within time, right? And mental and emotional release therapy is very similar to timeline therapy, where you can get a sense of like where you're comfortable with things existing, right? So we understand how they view themselves within time itself. Like where's the future? Where's the past, right? For most people, it's in front of them and behind them. Some people, it's this way and this way, right? In time or through time, we call it, right? And then once we establish that, I can say, okay, if you're at the present moment right now, and this is your axis, you're dealing with X problem right now. I want you to get into the problem. I want you to think the way you do when you're in the problem. I want you to feel what you do when you're in the problem. I want you to imagine what you do when you're in the problem so that your body can adopt that state.
So you're reliving it kind of.
Yeah, you're pulling it, you're resourcing the problem.
Okay.
Right. And then we'll essentially imagine floating out of ourselves and viewing ourselves in the problem physically. And we'll ask the nervous system to recall the earliest time that we felt this feeling. because you're in the feeling. So it's so much easier to do it now than to intellectually think about it. And this is how people get access to deeper memories. And so we'll observe the earlier incident, again, above it. We're always like you're viewing yourself as a third party. And we'll look for different information. We'll see what happened first and foremost. Then we'll see if maybe there was a lesson or a learning that wasn't acknowledged at the time, because so much of what we think about ourselves happens unconsciously. Like, and listen, sometimes people are just abusive and they're like, you're ugly and you're this and you're blah, 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 blah when we're a little kid. But sometimes we see someone else getting praise and we go, oh, that means I'm ugly.
Yes.
Right? And we have to remember that because we don't have critical thinking at that time. So we trust that feeling of rejection as being a fact. Right?
Mhm.
So sometimes it could be like, oh, it wasn't that. Actually, it was my mom gave my sister a lot of praise because she was more insecure than I was. And she didn't think I needed that. Right? And so then we can look at it again and be like, cool, is that feeling still there? And sometimes it's not. And sometimes it is. And if it is, then we'll go, okay, let's go back in the feeling. Let's see if we can go back even further. And we'll keep doing that until we find the root. And then sometimes if the person feels empowered enough, they can step in to the scene themselves through their own eyes and correct anything that they wanted to, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's amazing with the power of your brain is that when you're in these states, it's not understanding that this isn't the lived experience. There's no differentiation between what you're imagining and what you went through. And if people really understood that, and if people worked with people this way more, we would all feel so much more capable and so much more powerful in our lives.
Yeah.
And I think it's a shame that the majority of us are afraid to feel. Like intellect for so many of us has become our safest space. But the thing is, you'll never think away an emotion. And that's why we keep going with intellect and we keep repeating and trying to find the answer. And then we get overloaded and congested, and then we knock ourselves into fight flight. And then now we're sitting in an even worse feeling because no one teaches us what to do with these things. And that's, again, another loop, which is why people are like, ooh, I don't want to feel this, so I'm going to online shop. I don't want to feel this, so I'm going to get drunk. I don't want to feel this, so I'm going to take a weed gummy. I don't want to feel this, so I'm going to, just make my job, which I don't even like, the most important thing in my life and complain about everything that's going wrong so I don't have to actually face the stuff that's underneath, right? And it's all just avoidance of the real issue because we're not equipped to actually feel our way through our lives.
That's amazing. I think that the mirror therapy is probably something that I would definitely be interested in. I think that would be really useful to, now that you've explained it and what it is, I was like, oh, wow, that would probably be something that I would benefit from for sure.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to mention that you have, you started the seed level.
Yes.
How long ago? I'd love to know about.
I mean, I have no concept of time.
Okay, beautiful.
At all. Like, it's funny because there's this quote that I say all the time that comes from Kabbalah, and it says, time is the space between cause and effect. And I love that so much, but I'm always in cause or effect. And I'm so aware of when I'm in cause or effect throughout my day that it makes me lose track of time because I'm much more aware of like where I'm at in cause or effect, if that makes sense. So I think it's been a few years at this point. I mean, it has to have at least been like 4 years, I imagine, at this point since I've been on my own. Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
And I want to read something from your website because I thought it was really beautiful.
Okay. I don't even know what's on there, so it's going to be a surprise for me too.
I just love it. When I read this, I was like, oh, that's really beautiful. That was what my first thought was. So this is seed level. And it says, imagine a world where you had the motivation to achieve the things you wanted in life without experiencing internal conflict, self-doubt, or fear. And I loved that because sometimes I was thinking that about myself. I was like, God, I wish, I could do this or that without this. Like, I always felt it was this internal conflict, like fighting with myself. And fear has been a huge theme in my life throughout my entire life. And so that really spoke to me. And I think that alone and all the work that you do is really beautiful. And I love that it says, leaving clients feeling empowered and having trust in themselves, through conscious and unconscious cognitive reframing. And that's everything that we spoke about with the loops. And yeah, I think you really hit it on the notch there.
Thank you. Turns out I don't have to update my website.
So Atarah, I would love to know if you were speaking to your younger self and also speaking to the audience who have dreams and goals, and they might be struggling with something or maybe struggling with a lot of things and a lot of traumas. What kind of advice would you give to yourself and also the dreamer audience that wants to achieve things?
Yeah. So I don't want this to sound like a pitch, because it isn't. This is just, it really comes from my heart, because I know how that feels, because that's where I spent the majority of my life, in fear of not being seen, but fear of being seen too much, fear of not doing anything, fear of doing the wrong thing, to this point where I just lived in this constant paralysis. And the kind of amalgamation of all the work that I've done up to this point, whether it's trauma work, PTSD work with people with cancer, immune disorders, manifestation work, neurolinguistic programming, all of these things, I funneled down into a really simple process. And this is what's about to launch, actually. And it's just called Make It Happen. And because I didn't want to call it manifestation or this, because I don't care about manifestation. I care about people's happiness, and I care about people feeling resourced within themselves and capable within themselves, and people being able to have the capacity to hold the life that they say that they want, and to understand how to get into alignment with that life. And the way that I've done that is really figured out how to turn this into a simple teaching. And I call it ego versus essence. And really helping people understand what's an ego structure versus who they really are. And can we feel through that thing? And so that's the workshops that are about to launch. And it's almost as if you're sitting with me in session, like in Zoom. That's how I want it to feel, so that you feel like you're being supported as you're going through the process and through the work. And I would say there are two questions that I always ask myself. And I think there are two questions that can really help anybody figure out what the right thing to do is. And the first one is, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? Mm-hmm. And the second question is, am I giving from who I truly am? And if I answer those questions, I can move through anything, because especially as a people pleaser, which is what I was my entire life, I learned that I had to give to be anything. There was never a me in the equation. It was always something I had to do, some kind of like physical thing that created my personal currency, right? So I never really considered what my needs were. And as a result, I wasn't able to create relationships, because a relationship to me was me showing up for people and needing nothing in return. And when I ask people, like, am I giving from who I truly am? They're like, well, I give all the time, and I do this and I do this for these people. I'm like, right, but like, are you giving because that's actually what you feel you want to do? Or are you giving because you want to do that so that person likes you, or you want to do that because you think it's going to get you a promotion, or is it just you giving really from your essence and the soul of who you are as a person? So yeah, those two questions. What would I do if I wasn't afraid? And am I giving from who I truly am? And when we ask ourselves those, and last night I said to my husband, so much of my work has been to allow myself to show up fully, because so much of my value historically has come from me shrinking myself or being what people needed me to be and not considering my own needs. And this year for me, whether it's with my relationships and my businesses, with my business, with my marriage, with my creativity, is if I'm showing up from what I would do if I wasn't afraid, it would look like doing everything fully and as honestly as possible, and not editing or tailoring or thinking about the consequence, doing it from a pure place of creation and a pure place of intentionality. And that's my kind of mantra for the year, is like, do it from the most honest place and don't worry about the results, because it is what I teach. And whenever I've leaned into that sentiment, I've always been the most successful that I've ever been. And that's what I'd recommend to everybody else.
I love that. And that's really, I think, especially important in this day and age, and even with social media. If you make a post and it's something that comes from the heart, and you're checking like the likes afterwards, like right away, Like, I've been doing this lately. I'm like, post, and I just like forget about it, because if I did it and I like it and it means something to me, like the outcome doesn't matter.
No,
It
but
doesn't matter.
no, but and listen, it doesn't. But I will also say simultaneously, give yourself a fighting chance. And what that looks like is showing up on social media is really hard. I mean, I see it all the time with this past few months, I've had so many posts that have gone like 3 million views, like just, and seeing the way people will respond to things, sometimes it's like, oh my God, like, I can't believe this is the world that we live in. Right. And it's easy to plug into that negativity and then feel like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't this or maybe I shouldn't that. But I never do that, but I understand why other people do. So I think part of showing up is not just posting your video, but also interacting with other people's stuff and leaving thoughtful comments. And that's how I get so many of my new followers, not just from my content, but from the thoughtful things I say in other people's posts and interaction that I have. Like, it's called social media. Like, allow yourself to be social. And when you are social on it, people are like, oh my God, like, this person always makes such a good point. Then the creator starts pinning your thing because there's 50 comments in response to it. And like, really let yourself be seen, because people say that they want to be seen, but you have to allow yourself to be seen. You have to actually show up. And that lives beyond your own post. If you want your friends to support you, you should be supporting what they're doing. If it's not on social media, you should be going in person. If you want people to hear what you're learning, you have to be thoughtful and you have to meet people with that same energy, because no one's going to give it to you out of nowhere. And sometimes you have to ask for it. And that sounds like such a crazy thing. People are like, well, I'm so tired of having to teach people how to be my friend. Well, you have to, because if people aren't being your friend the way that you want them to be, you have to show them what you want, but you also have to practice what you preach.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Before we wrap up, do you mind me asking you what your original name was?
I don't care, but what I don't like about it is it's such a small part of my life that it doesn't really like have value for me. Like, cause like for me, what is that going to help anybody with? Right. Yeah.
Okay. So, and with all that said, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience? And
my intention, I guess, for the audience would be, if you take nothing else away from this, take those 2 questions away from this. What would I do if I wasn't afraid? And am I giving from who I truly am? I think those 2 questions alone can change somebody's life. And if you're interested in really having that mirror of where you're at and where you want to go, along with tools that will support that, you know where to find me.
Yeah. So Atarah, your Instagram is Atarah Valentine.
Yes.
And you can find all your work at theseedlevel.com. And I'm actually hopefully interested in working with you in the future.
I'll always have space.
I think you're a really beautiful human.
Likewise. Thank you.
In a short time that I've met you, and I love your essence and I love everything that you're about. So keep shining.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Of course. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Dream Fuelers. We hope today's episode inspired you on your healing journey. Remember, transformation is possible for everyone. Follow and share with someone who really needs it, and we'll see you next time. Keep dreaming big.